And what is up? Welcome in. Beautiful day in the capital city. I am Wes Mitchell. He is Chris Clark. We are live from the Market on Main in downtown Columbia, South Carolina. Going to tell you quite a bit about what they've got going on here at Market on Main. Great place to watch an away game. And we're going to tell you a little bit about the Market Party Express as well, as we have done many Fridays during this college football season. Of course, we'll tell you about our buddy Clint Hammond and our friends at Liberty Tax as well. This is our Gamecock versus Kentucky preview show. Chris, it feels like this game, I guess because we got a little head start on it, has been a long time coming. Last week almost felt like a bye week to an extent. Had Saturday off as far as a Carolina game goes. Carolina got a little head start on Kentucky. And now here we are, Friday, the day before, Gamecocks versus Kentucky, 7:30 p.m. kickoff, SEC Network. And check your local listings for that. It's here, though. It's almost here. Big game for the Gamecocks. Shane Beamer has to downplay it. You want to go – every game stands on its own merit. Every game you want to prepare the exact same for. But outside looking in, man, there's no argument against the idea that this is a big game for South Carolina.
Huge game in more ways than one. And I know we always like to stay away from the whole must-win thing, especially with where South Carolina's at. But this is a hugely important game. It's meaningful from an emotional standpoint because of the fact that Kentucky's been able to take 7 of the last 8 from South Carolina. You've got all the off-season chirping and chatter with Mark Stoops and what he said about the sunglasses and Shane Beamer's response at the Gamecock Central kickoff party. And then kind of both of them not walking it back, but Stoops saying he wasn't referred to Beamer. Beamer, of course, being very respectful to Mark Stoops, and everything seems fine there. I expect not going to be any ill will. They're going to be down there on the field smiling before the game and all that. But this is a game that really has been hurtful to South Carolina fans the last several years. There's been some close games in there that they weren't able to take. You look at the game last year at home, 16-10 Kentucky win. South Carolina feels like that one kind of got away from them. And then you look, Wes, at the fact that South Carolina's 3-2. And you've got an opportunity on the road with a Kentucky team that's been banged up, quite frankly. And you've gotten healthier if you're South Carolina. The path to getting back to bowl eligibility is not easy this year. And so this is a game that you look at throughout the rest of the schedule. It's not an easy game. It's a very difficult game, but it's maybe one of the more winnable ones remaining on the schedule. And so getting a win here on the road would be meaningful in more ways than one. It gets you a 4th win. It gets you closer to bowl eligibility, but means so much more than that even than just a win in the column this year.
Well, the big topic on everyone's mind right now is how healthy is Will Levis?
Yeah.
Does he play? If he plays, how close to 100% is he? I think it's safe to say he's not going to be 100%. That seems pretty apparent. How's the finger on the non-throwing hand? How is the quote-unquote lower leg, as they always give these days? These injury reports get more and more vague in sports. So, I think this certainly, I think with a banged-up Will Levis or, a backup quarterback who has not played, I was about to say meaningful down, has not thrown a pass in a college football game, certainly becomes a bit more winnable for South Carolina, I think. And, Beamer, I was listening to him talk, obviously, in the press conference this week, but, even last night on the call-in show, he was like, look, I understand the narrative about having not won a road game in the SEC yet is going to be a thing until it is not. And, I look at this as probably one of their better opportunities to go ahead and kind of get that proverbial monkey off their back. You mentioned last year's game as far as letting it get away. Multiple opportunities in the second half where South Carolina took over in Kentucky territory. The things I remember about that game most, A, it was very winnable. B, Levis he's a different quarterback then maybe. He didn't do a ton against South Carolina. Kentucky turned it over a couple times. And I remember at the time thinking, Luke Doty does not look like himself. Like, he did not have the explosiveness, athleticism we are used to seeing from him. This game was sort of circled to me by someone prior to the season as like, hey, the upgrade at the quarterback position, having a healthy guy, having someone like Rattler's upside at that spot, could be a difference in a game like this that was very tight last year. And I think, we're going to talk about the running game. Obviously, we're going to talk about the lines of scrimmage. But as it will be all year long, Chris, going to be very important for Seven to play well, and for him and just this offense in general to not turn the football over tomorrow.
That's where I was going to go. When I think of Spencer Rattler playing well in this game, obviously South Carolina is going to need him to do what he's capable of doing. They're going to need some explosive plays. They're going to need, quite frankly, some big throws from him on third down, I think, right? I mean, but the biggest thing they need him to do is to not turn the football over. And that goes for Spencer and everyone, right? I mean, we're just coming off a game against SC State in which Spencer Rattler threw a couple picks, and neither was his fault, especially the second one, right? But that said, it's a whole team thing, but that's going to be, I think, number one for Spencer Rattler. Look at not only turnover margin just in general, South Carolina. I know you had the stat a little bit ago on our show on 107.5. What was it, tied for second in the country in terms of on the wrong end?
The wrong direction.
But you look at the two
Most
SEC
turnovers.
games this year, Georgia, Arkansas, South Carolina 3-0 in both of those games. So not only did you turn over the football 3 times,
so combined
you
6-0.
6-0 combined. You're not going to have any chance to beat Georgia at home doing that against an elite team, and you're also not going to go on the road and beat even a decent team, but especially a good team like Arkansas on the road. So that's the number one trend, honestly. That's the starting point that you have to reverse. Then we can get into everything else. Talk about everything else. If they go on the road and lose the turnover margin 3-0, they're not winning the football game.
Definitely, man. By the way, what's up, Craig, Justin, Andy? Wow, we got Andy Reid on here. How about that? Maybe he can weigh in on the South Carolina offense for this game. But I'm sure Andy hasn't heard that joke before.
Never.
But Chris, I'm going to say something that just came to mind. Y'all can call me an idiot if you want. This may be a stupid thought, but it's going to sound a little counterintuitive. This actually might be one of those games where a punt is not the end of the world. And the reason I say that is this could potentially be a throwback type SEC football game. And I think you're going to have offensively limited possessions.
Yeah.
I think you look, these offenses are actually very similar in what they try to be as far as they huddle up. Like you watch Kentucky play, it's much like South Carolina. When you see the quarterback doing this, that means, all right, guys, huddle up. And then they call a play. They walk to the line. You see shifts, motions. They're not in a hurry to snap the football. And, we've seen South Carolina use some up-tempo at times, but they have not been in a hurry to snap the football either. So it's going to be limited possessions. And this is a Kentucky defense, man, that will swarm you. They're very good at getting off the field. They are very physical, and they're going to force you to go the length of the field. I don't know if this is a game where Carolina can count on the offense to, go score 31 points, 35 points. I think go ahead and kind of, just my opinion, if the offense doesn't score 31 points tomorrow, I don't actually think that's some huge indictment on the offense. I don't think that means they necessarily didn't play well. I think this game will be about taking what is there, not turning the ball over, but then most importantly, hitting when you do have those few opportunities to get points or to hit big plays, because they will give them to you.
Mm-hmm.
Every team does. There's no perfect defense, except maybe at times Georgia last year.
Right.
But does that make sense? There's going to be limited opportunities, so you can't. I'm putting this in the context of what you said earlier. You can't force those opportunities, because if you force them, that's when you're going to be turning the football over, putting your defense in bad spots, and playing right into Kentucky's hands at home and getting that crowd going.
That's what they would like to do, is to limit your possessions. When you think about how South Carolina is going to attack Kentucky, and here's a thought that just came to mind too. Maybe it's also dumb. Yours was not. Marcus Satterfield pointed out that Kentucky is normally in the right place. He said it's a beautiful thing to see. And he pointed out, this is interesting, that they got bounced out of some gaps against Ole Miss at times when Ole Miss went tempo, right? So given that they are so sound on defense, given that Spencer Rattler has even publicly said We like to run tempo. Our team likes it. Is that part of the game plan? Is drive one tempo? Now, there's a trade-off to that. You go out there and go tempo, you might just have a warp speed 3 and out.
Yeah.
You don't want that either. But I have to think that might be baked into their plan, particularly with we don't know if Kentucky's J.J. Weaver will play. He's missed a couple games. Jacquez Jones, it doesn't sound like their linebacker is going to play. So do they try to get them a little bit off schedule defensively and out of some gaps and hit some plays? Maybe so.
Yeah, man, I think that's an excellent point. And we've seen Carolina use tempo the way I like, and that is use it off of a first down. You know what I mean? Like, I think that's the way we've seen college football go. There was this trend for a while there where teams were literally like, let's go as fast as we can. And these teams were so married to the idea of tempo that you would see that like three straight plays and your defense is right back on the field with no not even game time, like no real time, like actual time off the clock, because you're just running to the line of scrimmage and snapping the ball. And I think to get into tempo, you need to hit a play that gives you some momentum.
Yeah.
And I would say no better opportunity for that than potentially. I'm gonna steal your thunder, but I want you to expound on it. You mentioned the tight ends, and keys to victory, I think. And I've been saying, look, Jaheim Bell. Not that this is something. I mean, everybody's been saying this. At some point, they gotta let Jaheim Bell have his big game. And I completely get, what Beamer said is true. Is it's not always going to be him. It's not always going to be Antoine Wells. Like, there's going to be different weeks where you say there's only one football. Is what I'm trying to say. It should be different weeks where you say, this was this guy's week to go off. Eventually, Zero is going to have his day. This might be one you pick because Nick Roush, KSR, told us their replacement for Jacquez Jones has been very good against the run. Maybe not as comfortable defending the pass. And then I think you had some stats. I don't know if you remember off the top of your head, but they've been a little, willing to give up some yardage. Maybe not willing, but they have given up some yardage to tight ends. Could this be the week that Stog or Jaheim gets loose down the seam?
It's been interesting. Kentucky's defense has been pretty stingy all year. I mean, no better evidence than you look at last week. Ole Miss at home, explosive offense, Lane Kiffin, 22 points. Not a lot of points. They won the football game. They did enough, but it wasn't like Ole Miss just outscored them consistently throughout the game. Kentucky had a couple opportunities. They were doing what you said, a classic Kentucky drive. Could have won the game or at least tied it, turned the football over, right? So it's not like Ole Miss lit them up. Florida scored, 16? The team that actually did the best job against Kentucky was Northern Illinois. They did a fantastic job, I thought, scheming throughout that game. They scored 23. I think it was 14-14 at halftime. One of the scores was a later touchdown. The game was still it's probably out of reach, but scored a fourth quarter touchdown. But especially early did a really good job, and they used some concepts that I thought had some carryover for South Carolina. They used zone runs, and they were getting to the second level in Kentucky. They used some formations that we've seen from South Carolina even. We saw some H-back, we saw some tight end, and some boots that Spencer Rattler has been utilized a lot on this season. But Tristan Tews, the tight end for Northern Illinois, had 6 catches, including 2 touchdowns. One of them was on a throwback, like a receiver jet sweep throwback. But he had 2 touchdowns in the game, 6 catches. They did a pretty good job of moving their tight ends out into space and hitting them on some boots. So when I saw that, my mind went to, okay, Austin Stogner, Jaheim Bell, other types, your receivers might be tough to come by, but here's some plays more in the middle of the field that might be there for the taking.
Yeah, I think that's definitely something to watch because there's not going to be many holes in this Kentucky defense. And I think, they have been, it's interesting. They've been like, Satterfield talked about this too. They've been an NFL style defensive scheme. And, they're going to, it seems like in the past they do play some zone defense, but it's I sometimes think of zone defense as being like passive. I don't think of Kentucky's defense as being passive. Like they come up and they hit you. They have big defensive backs. They have length on the edge. And, Satterfield was talking about, though, they play like a structurally an NFL style front. And it's kind of a 3-4 personnel, or at least a 3-man front personnel. A lot of times, if you watch them, though, they're going to have 4 guys on the line. One of them is more like a stand-up guy, and then 3 other guys inside, and that changes the way. Like we're getting deep into the weeds, and I wouldn't even know enough about it to know how to explain it to everybody. That does change the blocking assignments a bit for what you're going to see South Carolina call in the run game offensively. So, I think let's go ahead and head that off. Don't look at what they did against SC State and be like, well, why are they calling different run calls? If you're one of those people who like really specifically looks at what they're doing in the running game, it's probably going to look a little bit different. And Kentucky, they lost their guy from last year that was an absolute stud in the middle. But it's a little bit more of that middle guy, they just want him to basically hold up 2 gaps and sort of just bury your center is what they're trying to do and allow everybody else to make plays. Like you said, it'll be interesting to see if the Weaver kid is back. He's a really good player for them. Probably a difference maker, I think. If we want to get like into the running game, I think that's 2 things to watch there, Chris, on both sides. One, can Carolina get movement in the middle, or can they find something on the edges? And for South Carolina, can they set the edges on defense? And does that mean Gilbert Edmond is still playing out there, or do you see South Carolina mess around a bit with their personnel with an extra couple of days as well to get ready for this game? I haven't been told anything, but I got to think you're going to have something in your pocket defensively. I don't think necessarily you can just go out there in your regular old 4-2-5 and just stick in it the whole game.
Yeah, we saw some 5-man fronts against Arkansas. South Carolina had to get away from it. I mean, you remember in that game, Boogie Huntley went down with an injury. Of course, that was the game they lost Jordan Strachan. And Mo Kaba. So you didn't see it as much, but we saw some iterations where they had basically what it kind of looked like was 3 down linemen and 2 stand-up guys on the edge most of the time. So we saw some 5-man fronts against a running team in Arkansas, especially if Levis doesn't play. They're going to have to bake into their game plan. You can't take in 2 completely separate game plans based on who's out there, but baked into their game plan has to be the fact that this is a team that does want to run the football, especially now that Chris Rodriguez is back. And at the very minimum, Levis will have some type of limitations, right? Mm-hmm. So they want to come out and run the football against a team that's, quite frankly, they've struggled to stop the run. South Carolina has. So, yeah, I think some wrinkles as far as having Tonka set the edge, that'll be critical. And obviously, I mean, tackling is going to be at a premium this game, not only in the run game against Rodriguez, but some of these receivers, Danke, Tavion Robinson, and then Barryon Brown. Those guys can make you pay if you don't tackle them in the open field.
Yeah, Barryon Brown is on my personal all man crush team. Like,
right,
this dude is fast,
very fast,
and there's a lot of guys that are fast in college football, but he's like, his speed is a game breaker. I feel like he messes up angles, for guys. And, for Pete Limbo's special teams this week, I cannot shake the feeling that special teams are going to be a big part in this game. And you feel good. Like, Pete Limbo is like a special teams genius. Like, you feel good about South Carolina winning most weeks, winning their special teams battles. Like, you just do, because Limbo will have his guys prepared. But this kid is one of those guys that sometimes you don't necessarily realize just how fast he is until you've played against him, I feel like. So I think taking those proper angles, and if you listen to Limbo speak this week, it was a very honest press conference. And he basically said, I'm paraphrasing, he basically said, all the gadgets are fun, but I'd much rather be sitting here talking about playing great technique. And you could tell, now he has a high standard. I think we have to consider that as well. But you could tell, I think he's been trying to get the attention of the guys and saying, I haven't seen the great technique and over-the-top effort that I'm looking for consistently out of my units. So, SC State, man, let's say it for what it is. They probably couldn't really expose you necessarily on some of those things. Kentucky could, I think. By the way, we are getting served up right now by Anna. Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course.
We're at the market on
I
Main.
brought some silverware for you guys as
Oh, yeah,
well.
perfect.
Anything else I can get for you?
I think we are great.
All right.
Good. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you, Anna. Chris, what you working with, man?
We have some chorizo tacos right here. There you see, looks like a tzatziki sauce, Wes.
Oh, yeah.
Those
cucumber
look
in there.
absolutely amazing.
That looks like, is that like a guacamole?
It's an avocado type of,
okay, yeah.
type of sauce.
All right, I'm working. Believe it or not, when she said ham sandwich, I was kind of like, I don't know. But
Look at that.
I'm working with the ham sandwich. Oh, I about dropped the pasta salad, y'all. The ham sandwich, pasta salad. Let y'all get a little look at that. This is the ham sandwich with bacon, some honey mustard,
Looks
some
phenomenal.
melted cheese. Looks amazing, actually. So you can come out and get this as well. I think it's Restaurant Week in Columbia as well. It's Restaurant Week every week, I feel like, in Columbia.
Yes, for us.
But yeah, come on out, Market on Main. Again, you've got the QR code right over here for the Market Party Express. Trying to tell y'all a little bit more about that. Y'all have to wait on that. But so, Chris, completely lost my train of thought with this food that
I
just
know,
got put down
and the
in front of
smell
us.
is like just
Yeah,
wafting.
we're just all right,
into
y'all. We'll
my
see you
brain
later.
now.
Yeah. We got a show to do, but for real, where was I at?
The chorizo and the ham has just totally.
There's
No, we were talking about Pete Limbo and special teams, and I think one thing I was going to add on, not to cut you off, is Limbo was not. I mean, there was really no gray area there. He mentioned, I think, didn't he, specifically the SC State and Charlotte games?
yes.
That it maybe didn't show up, but he did not like what he saw on film.
Mhm.
You made those types of mistakes against Barryon Brown. The Kentucky band is probably playing or they're about to be soon.
Yeah, absolutely. That was the point I was getting at. Like, this kid is going to find the seam.
Yeah.
Beamer joking yesterday that on one, and I was in and out listening to the show on the radio when I was in the car. He said on one of the returns from Kentucky that the kid he made some signal or accidentally signaled to a few of his teammates that they thought he was just going to, like, fair catch it, I think. So they stopped blocking. And then he still takes off. It didn't matter at all. So, man, that is something to watch, I feel like. Because that would be brutal for South Carolina if they outplay Kentucky or play Kentucky to a draw on offense and defense, and then special teams ends up being the reason they lose because they're as well prepared as anybody.
That would be
teams.
That would be a gut punch, no doubt. But I mean, you look at this game. I think it's generally expected to be a close game, right? Like I don't think anybody thinks Kentucky by 3 touchdowns. Certainly not South Carolina by 3 touchdowns, right? Even if Will Levis doesn't play, it's expected to be an evenly matched game. So it could be literally one play, and that could be a long return, even if it's not a score. Maybe you set up. I mean, you're talking about field position earlier and how possessions may be limited. Field position certainly is going to be at a premium. You can't afford a bad return. You can't afford an explosive runner, an explosive pass that sets up the other team in scoring position. And you mentioned earlier, you have those opportunities for a deep ball or an explosive play for South Carolina. You've missed. I mean, I don't know if this is fair. Missed more of those than you made, but probably so. You got to hit those.
Yeah, when it's been kind of one of those things at times where it's like if it's not one thing, it's another.
Yeah.
And to hit a deep ball, you have to have so many things go right. You got to have the protection. Quarterback's got to get the ball there, and the receiver's got to go catch it for you. And too many times, I feel like it's been like 2 out of 3. There's protection, the ball is there, but then the receiver doesn't make a play, or they drop back. There's no protection, but maybe the receiver was open, or Rattler just barely. How many near misses have we? I mean, how close has he been to making some spectacular throws on the line that have just barely been off? So I think that's definitely something there, man. If they give you an opportunity And they're going to have to continue to block. They being South Carolina's receivers, got to block on the outside, man. Like that, a team that if they are going to play some off coverage, play some zone, those little quick throws to the outside that Pearson hates are they're gonna still be in the game plan. I feel like, and the difference in that being no gain and being a positive gain, even if you get 4 or 5 yards, you're actually happy with that. I think it's an extension of your run game.
That's what I was going to say. Extension of the run. It's the same as it almost be like saying, well, why are you running the football? Well, everybody loves running the football. People are always yelling about it in the stands, and for good reason. You have to do it to win. What do you have to do to run the football? You got to block.
Yeah.
You got to hand the ball. You got to have a clean exchange. You got to block, and you have to have a guy go make a play. And with the competition that South Carolina plays, frequently you're normally not going to be untouched, even before or at the line of scrimmage. So same thing with these quick. If they're going to give you 5 yards on the outside, if you can't take it, that's your fault. So go take it. Block on the perimeter. The team's been up and down. Kentucky's got length. They're physical at DB. You got to go out and win some of those battles on the edge.
I think this is where you go in. Not that they don't do this every week, but I think you challenge your guys on the outside. I think you challenge them and tell them just how, hey, those guys are big. They're physical. They might be more physical than you. I think you challenge your receivers on the outside because that's going to be a key to this game, man, is that, those plays look bad when you don't have blocking, and they look very simple. How many times have y'all watched the defense of a team you pull for, South Carolina included, and be like, God, that looks easy. Well, it's a pretty easy throw, even though it's not even that easy of a throw.
Right.
But Rattler gets the ball out there quick. Like, he has a quick release, tight spiral. If you can block them, there are, the timing on those plays is so important. And I think there are opportunities there if you block out there on the edge. And I think that's where, you look at obviously like Jalen Brooks, a guy that gives you some size out there. Do we see they've used at times Stogner and Jaheim Bell flexed out very wide in the formation because they give you an extra blocker out there as well. So I think that's going to be something to watch in this game if Kentucky does play some off coverage, which it seems like they do. Craig's saying I'm dying to take a bite. He is reading me perfectly. This thing looks amazing. But they also, again, as we tell you every week, the Market Party Express is at 1040 Key Road, right outside of Williams-Brice Stadium. They're already sold out for Texas A&M, but they do have availability for homecoming and the Tennessee game if you want to tailgate in style in a Cockaboose for a couple of games this year. And really gives you an opportunity if you don't own a Cockaboose and want to experience what Cockaboose tailgating is all about. Hit up our friends there. Go to marketonmain.com. They have a tab up there where you can get your tickets. They also, if you're in Columbia, they have these dinner events that are wine dinner events. They have a Spanish dinner next Wednesday, and then there are tickets for a French and Italian dinners available as well. Again, marketonmain.com. Hit the Market Party Express. Dude, the Italian dinner.
Oh, yeah.
That's probably the direction I would go. I know Chris here loves some Italian as well.
Absolutely.
But let's see. What have we not hit about this game? We've hit a lot of things so far. Crowd probably into it. There's a good point. If y'all want to read more about this game, head on over to our friends at KSR, Kentucky Sports Radio. I know you've been reading over there, man. I have as well. I feel like I've learned quite a bit just from perusing their website.
Yep.
And I think a point they made was, and I didn't realize this because I don't cover or follow Kentucky that closely, Stoops teams have actually struggled a bit coming off of their first big loss of a season.
Yeah, it's an interesting point.
And this is from Adam Luckett. I hope I'm getting that right. On their podcast with Nick Roush. And, he seemed like that was a real thing. Like, that's kind of a concern from the Kentucky perspective, is sort of you get built up, and this Kentucky team has been built up.
Oh, absolutely.
Top 10 team, supposedly. And then you get a big just gut punch type loss where you have two opportunities to go win the game, Chris. that's maybe worth keeping an eye on. I think the two things, just from a mental standpoint, in this game, from a Kentucky perspective, how quickly can you put that behind you early in this game? From the South Carolina perspective, we've used this key every single week. Can you get off to, I won't even say a fast start. Can you get off to a medium start, and like not be down early on, not have the here we go again on the road type situation. So that could be two like non-physical things for both sides that play a factor into the flow of this game.
Yeah, I mean, if you come out and you start slow again, and remember, the slow starts, let's not absolve the defense. They have also started very slow.
Yes,
I think when people think about the slow starts, they think about the amount of points you're putting up on the board. Other teams have been putting up a lot of points early as well, for the most part. And even Charlotte, SC State didn't. Charlotte did. Everybody else has. So you got to get off to you get in a 14-0 hole after the first quarter or something like that, it's going to be very difficult to climb back into the game. Now the atmosphere is kicked up. Kentucky's keyed up. They're confident. You're playing right into the type of game that Mark Stoops wants to play. So getting off to a fast start is critical.
Yeah, it absolutely is, man. I feel like every game has a flow. As Chris is about to flip his food, he wants some so bad.
Right into my lap almost.
Yeah.
Nice.
Every game has a flow. And when you get down so early, and again, I think it's right to point that out, man. It has not just been the offense. If anything, it has definitely been both sides. Maybe even more so the defense. We have seen, against Arkansas, the offense early on, even if you're not putting up points, they had some drives where you're moving the ball. Matter of fact, South Carolina, remember the very first opening sequence against Arkansas, they moved the ball and then I think ended up having a penalty and then had it was one of their worst punts of the year, I think. And they ended up, you should have been flipping field position. And it was the same as a turnover.
Yep.
So that would be like almost a seventh turnover. You want to talk about hidden yardage? Limbo likes to talk about hidden yardage. Dude, that's a hidden yardage play. It's a turnover as far as how the game flows. So, man, I think just to be able to get into the flow of the game, not feeling like you're chasing, is massive. Because if you have to chase against Kentucky, that's when you get into throwing the ball in those tight windows, the ball getting batted around, and potentially having those turnovers we're talking about. Like, a lot of times we talk about turnovers like big picture, rightfully so, but all these other little factors probably factor into why you have to put the ball in danger in the first place, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it would be amazing to see the South Carolina team and insightful to see them play a game from ahead. We have not seen that. We saw it against SC State, but we didn't even see it at the beginning of the Charlotte game, right? I mean, certainly not in conference play. I mean, you look at what happened against Georgia. You look at Arkansas game, 21-3. It does completely change the complexion of the game, and I think it's amplified against a team like Kentucky. One little small thing, Wes, that I'm looking at too is to get off to that fast start. Well, how do you do that offensively? Defensively, I think we know, right? I mean, you got to stop the run. You got to force them into some mistakes, make them punt. But offensively, Marshawn Lloyd's touches, I think, are going to be key in this game too. He's been the most reliable and dangerous-looking guy in the run game. He's also been an asset catching the ball. In SEC play, I didn't even realize this, has not seen 10 carries in an SEC game yet. So he's caught the ball some in each of those games. But I think either the Georgia or Arkansas game, I'm flip-flopping these probably, but 9 carries, I think, in one and maybe 7 in the other. So touches early for Marshawn Lloyd, I think, are critical.
Yeah, and I think being in a position where the game is not out of hand probably puts you do that, and I thought the way the Arkansas game is going, they probably, looking back, would have ran him a little bit more because they actually had success running the ball against Arkansas, probably way more so than they were given credit for at the time. I mean, when they ran it, it was there. Yeah. And, I would dare say it's probably going to be a little bit more – you're going to have to be a little bit more just hard-headed running the ball against Kentucky and just sort of hope you can sort of just chip away at that wall. I look at it like that whole chopping wood mentality. And I think that's something for Satterfield. He would probably personally tell you, sometimes is a bit hard to do when you get in the flow of the game. And you know what Seven can do. You know what his arm is capable of. You also almost have to protect yourself from yourself as a play caller
Right.
and say, keep getting the ball to one. This could ultimately break, and you get more yardage out of it than you initially appear like you're going to get.
Sure.
But, man, you can't – it's hard to be hard-headed in the running game if you are down.
Yeah.
If you're in the flow of a game and both sides are sort of throwing jabs, you're a little bit more like, all right, let's fill each other out. If you're down 21 off the bat, or the other team scored 21 in their first 3 possessions,
Yeah. It's hard to do that.
it's like hard to blame a coach
Yeah.
for doing that, because as we've talked about, man, Kentucky, if they have an early lead, they are going to be willing to sit on it, I think.
100%.
So I don't know, man. It kind of feels like we may know not who's going to win this game, but we may really have a feel for how this game is going to play out. What, 2 drives each into it?
Yeah, I think so. And I mean, the Arkansas game, there was a time that certainly felt like South Carolina was not going to win the game when it was 21-3 early. They did climb back into it, got the ball back down 5 in the third quarter, and okay. And ultimately, Arkansas slammed the door. But it just feels like it'd be tougher to do in a game like this, given the matchup. So, yeah, I think early on, if South Carolina is struggling early offensively and defensively, that'll probably tell the story. Probably be hard to turn that around. Not that it couldn't happen, but probably will tell us. So, yeah, I think early on, first, second quarter, probably have a decent feel for how it plays out.
All right, guys, it is not tax time yet, but if you unfortunately maybe didn't do your taxes right off the bat and filed an extension, that deadline is coming up. Or if you own a business and are looking for somebody to help you with your bookkeeping, our friends at the Liberty Tax Team right here in Columbia can help you with that. 803-462-5576. They have locations in Irmo, Columbia, and Lexington, 1123 South Lake Drive. That's Lexington, 7467 St. Andrews Road in Irmo, or 551 St. Andrews Road in Columbia. Again, 803-462-5576. If you owe the IRS money, that's unfortunate, but they can help you through that process, and you can talk to someone locally as opposed to some stranger on the other end of a 1-900 number. So 803-462-5576. Again, as always, thank you to Larry and our friends at Liberty Tax for supporting GC Live. Appreciate all of you who are in the chat right now as well. We got a pretty lively bunch for a Friday. I think everybody is excited for what appears to be, after obviously a rainy weekend last weekend, a beautiful weekend in Columbia, and hopefully the rest of the state of South Carolina as well. And maybe a renewed sense of the opportunity to win this game, I feel like, going through Gamecock Nation. At the start of the week, I feel like, Chris, there wasn't a lot of excitement from the fan base. I think it was kind of like, here we go again. Kentucky is on South Carolina. I feel a little bit of a renewed sense going into this game. Are we at the prediction point yet?
So. I think
We're getting there. I'm trying to think of – actually, hold that thought. We're going to tease that real quick. Chris is going to give his prediction. I'm going to give mine. Chris, do you think – we talked a little bit about personnel earlier. Any surprises for the personnel side? I'm curious to see what does the starting lineup look like on the offensive line? Because we have seen it – it's like very quietly shifted a bit due to injury. But then, it's been a situation where Jalen Nichols was a starter at left tackle. He has been back the last couple weeks. I don't know if he's 100%, but he's been back. He's been cleared to play. He's gotten in the games. But they have started Ja'Kai Moore at left tackle, and they have started Tyshawn Wanamaker at right tackle.
Yeah.
Dylan Wanham is back this week. Trey Jones, actually one of the guys who has been in the mix at left guard. He's entered the last few games. He's now banged up. Do you sort of see this O-line continuing to be a rotation? Like I'm very curious to see, as these next few games play out, does it sort of settle in
Yeah.
on a main five?
Yeah, that's a great question. I certainly don't have an answer. I think you gotta look at the health. So Dylan Wanham and Trey Jones, like, do they definitely play tomorrow? We don't even know that, right? Wanham did some things at practice, but like, is it going to get to game day? And Dylan Wanham wasn't quite ready to go. He didn't feel like he could go, or the medical staff didn't feel like he could go. So I think it depends on that. But I don't know. I mean, has anybody outright played so well at one of those tackle spots, or on the other side, have all the guys just earned playing time?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's very possible. But I'll be curious. I'll be watching that too. Who starts? And then do they platoon guys at the tackle position? I think it's entirely possible.
I think Ja'Kai Moore gives them a little more foot speed, like a little more athleticism on the edge. Now, again, like we said, this Kentucky defense is going to be big and physical up front. So do you maybe kind of try to match that? Or do you say, all right, we just want to go with our more athletic guy? And I think it maybe depends on the game plan to a bit as well. Like, are you going to throw to run, like throw to set up the run, or are you going to run to set up the throw game? I think it's going to be part of that. Wanamaker, I think a little bit smaller frame than like a Dylan Wanham. But they've said it several times, and I've seen it with my own eyes too, man. Wanamaker has a little – he brings some energy.
He does.
He has an edge, and I think that's another reason that getting off to a good start is imperative for them, because we see them sort of build off of each other. Remember last year when they sort of finally found some momentum late in the – you remember the offensive line against Florida and Auburn?
Oh, yeah. They were
just the excitement level.
Yeah.
Seeing some success. That's important, obviously, but for this team especially. And I think if Wanham can go, I personally wouldn't be surprised. I think we could just see all those guys. Yeah. I think some of it will be not down in distance, but game situation. And some of it will probably be, I mean, is it like a running back, almost like hot hand? Like, all right, this guy's playing well. This matchup's going well. That's who's going to be in there.
Yeah, probably depends on, who's Kentucky. J.J. Weaver's in the game, and he looks good. If he looks healthy, that might change how you feel about your rotation there. And, it looks like all those guys have, earned their playing time. Now, injuries have factored in, but they've taken a look at all of them. I think all of them have done some good things in spots. All of them have some things that certainly they got to improve on. And their performance, regardless of who's in there. And I do think, you probably lean towards a rotation, but just based on what we've seen. Their play will be very important on Saturday.
Yeah, it seems like, Chris, Javon Gwynn at right guard and Eric Douglas at center, really the only two guys that they have just sort of had locked into their positions. The only times they've really gotten out, it's been late in games when the games were decided, basically. As far as actual game reps when the game is on the line, those two guys have been in there. The other three spots, there's been a lot of rotation, and maybe some of it started due to injuries, but I think it does go a bit beyond that, personally. We've talked about keys to victory throughout the show, but real quick, man, I want to go back to what you were talking about earlier. I don't think we dove completely into it, but tackling specifically Chris Rodriguez. And, I don't know if you remember that stat you gave on 107.5 right off the top of your head, but even last week, as he was getting back into the feel for things, reminded me a little bit of what Corey Rucker said, like trying to get back into game shape. For South Carolina, you kind of hope he's still not quite in total game shape going into this week. But a lot of his yardage last week against Ole Miss was like an after contact situation.
Yeah, 70. I think it was 72 yards total, and 61 after contact. And that's just kind of what he does, pretty consistently. I mean, he's a hit at the line, or and gets 3 yards, or he's a looks like a 3-yard run, and now it's 6, and that's what you got to avoid. If you got an opportunity to get him down in the backfield, he needs to be down in the backfield. That you don't want this Kentucky team 6-yard knee to death and then taking some shots and being able to hit them. And so, obviously that's a concern for South Carolina. I don't want to say it doesn't matter who plays at quarterback, but when, in the run game, Kentucky will probably structure it differently if Will Levis can't go or if he's limited. But you got to be able to stop their backs and not have them extend yardage. And we saw Arkansas game, that's the biggest, thing you can point to, biggest example you can point to in that game. Over 150 yards after contact that South Carolina surrendered, and I think it was 21 missed tackles.
Yeah, they can't do
So,
that.
can't
and
do
win.
that.
I think if Kentucky does have to go to their backup quarterback, extremely inexperienced, has not thrown a pass in college, which I find very interesting that they haven't gotten him in
Not at all.
any of these games. He's a guy that started the year maybe third or fourth on the depth chart. They had a transfer out. Then he passed someone, it appears, and is now their number 2. He's got some athleticism to him, ran a 4.8 40. And, again, I'm leaning on KSR here, reading their profile. And, is a kid who's not going to be a run-first guy but can run around a little bit. So I think that'll be something to look at. Does he run away from South Carolina's defense? And another reason it's going to be so important to stop the run, slow the run. If they're able to just let him make easy throws, like quick throws to the perimeter, slants, keep it very simple, then he can probably manage that. If you're forcing him to actually go out there and read the defense and go through progressions and, not play behind a line that hasn't been great in protection, then that's probably a great recipe for Carolina's defense to be able to hold Kentucky to right, around or under 21 points. I think I think whoever gets into the 20s in this game can actually put some pressure on the other team to try to match them. So the fact he's got some athleticism, though, y'all, is something I'm keeping an eye on in this game. Is he able to run away from Carolina, extend some drives? On the other hand, Levis, very athletic, pretty big athletic guy, but if he has that injury, if he's playing hurt, maybe that takes away some of his escapability. So I think that's something to keep an eye on. But certainly if you want to just dial it down into one thing, tackling Rodriguez when you have opportunities. And somebody mentioned Debo Williams. I was listening to Darius Rush talk on his podcast this week, and he was talking about the backup linebackers and how much experience they got in the last 2 weeks. Man, I think Debo Williams, Stone Blanton, Bam Martin-Scott, I think those guys are going to have to play well in this game, whether that's potentially putting another linebacker on the field, something we don't see South Carolina do a ton of. But even if not, if Kentucky's going to just sort of hammer away at you, you're going to have to rotate guys quite a bit. So I think Debo, Stone, Bam, they're going to need to play well for South Carolina. So I would say look out there when the backups are on the field. Is Carolina still able to stop the run if they're stopping the run with the first team when those guys are out there too?
Yeah, this is a team that struggled some with depth, particularly at edge. Linebacker, they've got some guys that haven't played a ton, and so bringing those along. I think obviously the first team has to play well. That's your starting point, but you don't want there to be substantial drop-off when backups inevitably have to come in. So from that standpoint, it's nice if you can limit Kentucky's possessions. If you're playing 70 defensive snaps, probably not as good. Keeping it to 50 or 60, probably a lot better. So,
all right, we've been teasing our final predictions for a while now. Let's go ahead and give them. Chris, first of all, what was your non-final score prediction? We have two things. We have staff predictions for the game as far as the result, and we have our staff predictions where each person makes a prediction that is not the result of the game.
Yeah, I think mine was that, I mentioned the carries earlier from Marshawn Lloyd, just that he sees plenty of touches in this game. I think that they rely on Marshawn Lloyd, especially in the running game, but also in the passing game. I think this is based on what he's put on tape and his impact he's made. You look at Marshawn Lloyd and say, this is the guy we need to ride.
All right, my big picture prediction was basically that this is a grinded out, old school South Carolina, Kentucky type matchup. If you get to 21, you got a chance to win. If you get to 24, I think you win this game. Chris, what's your final score?
I've got Kentucky 27, South Carolina 20. I tried to factor in Levis not playing even. The concern, Wes, I think is, not just playing on the road. I'm not going to take the entirety of last year and bring it all the way forward to this year. Carolina's only played one road game. I don't think it's fair to say they can't play on the road. But, stopping the run until it's done, because they've struggled against really every team. And you didn't show up as much against SC State and Charlotte because of how those games went. But until they can stop the run, that's just kind of where I'm at. And their defense for Kentucky is still pretty stingy.
Yeah, they're very stingy, very stout. Shout out to Soggy Waffles, by the way, one of the best screen names.
It's a good one.
We have on here. He says Gamecock Country, let's ride. All right, I'm picking Gamecocks 21-17. Call it a gut feeling. I can't tell you why or how, but I just think it's going to be a physical, just one of those games where both sides sort of muck it up, and you have some turnovers. You have a couple big plays here and there. Maybe a special teams play is the difference. I don't know. We'll see. But Gamecocks are due against Kentucky. I feel like there's been some very winnable games in this bunch of games that South Carolina's lost to them. And I don't know, riding with the home team. We'll see what happens. I guess not the home team for this game, but the home team
We
for –
knew what you meant.
yeah. Well, somebody will call you out if you don't call yourself out.
Actually.
Yeah. Well, actually, sir. All right, y'all, that's it. Shout out to our boy Clint Hammond, ClintHammond.com, 803-771-6933. You've seen Clint, his info above our head all show. So well, I guess we don't have to tell you that much more about Clint. Y'all hear about him every day. We're here at the Market on Main. We're about to eat some amazing lunch. Chris has been like
Chorizo tacos.
sneaking some shots the whole way. I almost dropped the pasta salad again.
You're gonna do it.
Mark says, prove me wrong, Sat. We hear you, Mark. He's had a very consistent message all week long.
Yes.
Hey, appreciate y'all. Y'all have a great weekend. If you're going to the game, be safe. If you're going to the game, take a blanket, take a jacket. It is going to be chilly. Otherwise, enjoy it at the Hizzy. We'll have complete coverage, Gamecock Central. Obviously, Kendall Smith, our crew, Colin Taylor. They'll all be out there. I think we got a photographer out there as well. So complete coverage, Gamecock Central. He is Chris. I'm Wes. Appreciate Marking on Main. Appreciate y'all. Y'all have a great one, and we will see you on Monday.